And in Heels is a motivational, inspirational, and educational podcast for women entrepreneurs. Let's learn from each other, laugh with each other, and support each other so we can all succeed together. And just remember, women can do anything, and in heels. And welcome to this episode of And in Heels. We are so excited, Morgan and I, to welcome Angela Colville, career clarity and confidence coach. Welcome, Angela. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me.
So Morgan and I have gotten to know you through a mutual women's networking group that we're in through Women's Business League in the Tampa St. Pete chapter.
Yes.
And your story is incredible, and I can't wait for you to share that today. But tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Okay, so I am originally from California, and maybe about when I was around 30, I decided to get my master's in social work.
Okay.
So that's kind of where this journey all starts. And I knew that I wanted to go into some type of helping field.
Now, what did you do before that?
So before that, I worked a ton of different jobs. Like I worked at a law firm.
Okay.
I started out after college, my master's. My degree was in communications.
Okay.
And I started out at Enterprise Rent-A-Car in the Hollywood area.
Okay.
Rent cars to celebrities.
So you did all the things.
I did all retail.
What brought you to social work? Or is that part of a story you can tell us in a minute?
A little bit part of a story I'm going to tell you in a minute. But I knew that I wanted to do something to help people. A little bit of my calling. And it kind of will circle back to some things in a minute. But it was sort of my calling.
Okay.
And I couldn't decide, did I want to do psychology? What did I want to do?
Okay.
What happened was my grandfather got lung cancer. And my grandma one day asked if I could come and just be with him while she ran some errands. And at the time, they had hospice care coming in. And they were like, oh, they loved hospice care, all the staff, Mary, the nurse is coming in. And they were just really happy. And it was making my grandpa's last few months just so much quality and very comfortable. Yeah. And so when I had to spend those times with him, I found that even though, of course, it was very emotional, it was my grandpa, but I was very comfortable to be around him in that situation. And so after he died, I decided that I wanted to be a hospice volunteer. So I became a hospice volunteer, and as part of the volunteer training, each person, it's a multidisciplinary team. Each person comes in and explains their role. And one of the people that came in was the social worker. And she explained the role of a medical social worker, what they do. And I was like, wait, whoa, this is a job? Like you can do this? And so that was it. I decided to pursue social work.
That was your calling.
That was it.
Okay.
Got my master's, eventually got my license. So I was a hospice social worker for many years. We ended up in Chicago, and that was kind of the beginning of that.
Wow. What a great way to find your calling.
Yeah. And then eventually I started doing one-on-one therapy with adults. So not teenagers or children, men and women. And I did on virtual platforms. Prior to COVID, which of course the whole world.
So you were ahead of the curve.
Well, I don't know about being a pioneer, but yeah, right. Just like,
you were ahead of the curve,
maybe a little, kind of exploded after that. But, so I kind of had both of those experiences. And then
so that you used your social work certificate then to work with adults later on.
I got my licensing. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and then you can do therapy and counseling and be a therapist.
Very nice. Very nice. So what a great way to tie in two very different aspects of your license and that qualification to serve two different audiences.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes, very much so. And with the adults, it was a lot of work specializing in anxiety, depression, self-confidence, and life transitions. So things around that. That's
very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So
well, great story.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I think I know you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but for our motivational segment to our podcast today, I know you said obviously you worked, your grandpa inspired you to get your social work degree and your master's degree and your certification and go down that path. But what other pivotal moments and events led up to basically where you are today?
Yeah.
So I know that was kind of a moment in time that lasted many years, but you switched paths now.
Yes, I have switched paths. And just to touch on, there's kind of two different pieces to this path that I'm on today. So one is that in the midst of all of this, and when we lived in Chicago, I took some acting lessons for fun. When I was in high school, my life, so sorry, I keep hitting this microphone.
That's okay.
My life goal was to be an actress,
Okay.
And,
so way back when, that was your dream.
So as you know, I'm not even seeing me at the Academy Awards. However,
we haven't?
No,
are you sure?
Not yet, right? So, but I took some acting lessons, and then
Okay.
I took some voice acting lessons, and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, I wish I had pursued.
Now, this is before or after the social work degree?
This is in the midst of it. So I was still doing therapy, but I was
okay.
taking the classes for fun, right? Just for enjoyment.
Passion. This is a passion thing, hobby thing, right? Okay.
Hobby thing.
Okay.
And I was like, I wish I'd done this. I wish, I'm too old. I should have done it,
Yeah. Don't we all say that? Shoulda, coulda, woulda, yeah.
And the instructors were like, you should really pursue it. And my husband was like, not guaranteeing anything, but just like, kind of go for it. And my husband, and I told him, I was like, I wish I would have done it. Why didn't I ever do it? And he was like, why don't you just do it now?
It's not too late.
Like,
good for him.
Right.
Good for him for encouraging you.
I know.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to do it. But so, there was but of course, and I'll kind of tie some things that I'm going to talk about later into this. It's like, yeah, but how? What? I'll never be good. How can I ever do it? I'm never, all those kinds of thoughts. But eventually I did find my way on that path. And so I still do that part-time.
So you do voice acting.
I do voice acting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It is so really it's a lot of work, and a lot of your job is auditioning, by the way. That's kind of like a life of a voice actor in a lot of ways, is auditioning, but you also, by putting in a lot, you can really be successful too. So I do it on a more part-time basis.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So.
But isn't there some peace of mind in knowing that when you get to whatever point in your life you think, are your final days, you're not going to say, I regret not.
Well, Kelly, it's so interesting that you say that. So 2 pieces of this. So one, Morgan, right? This has kind of led me to wanting to help women who spend their days maybe at a job right now that they don't, but they're thinking about the job they want, or the business they want to start,
or the life they want.
So, and they're stuck.
They can't.
For many reasons, they're not clear. They're just not confident. They have all those
self-doubt,
the negative what ifs going on.
Yeah.
So that's one part why I'm passionate about this now, kind of shifting from therapy to coaching, because I see it so much, especially in women.
Right.
But also having that background of hospice, so many times I heard, I really regret. I wish I would have.
And at that point,
and even just to try something different or pursue something different. So there's kind of this combination of things I discovered.
Let's reflect on that just for a second, because that's so meaningful.
Yeah.
Because when you've been, and you shared this prior to today, so I'm aware a little bit of your experience in this, but when you get to that moment, and you're sitting with your hospice counselor, and your family's around you, or whomever's there, and you say in those final moments, the one thing I regret, or the things I regret are, working a job I hated my whole life is probably at the top of that list, and not pursuing the things that I thought I would have been good at, or I would have loved to have tried or experienced or seen. Like, that's powerful.
It's really powerful. And it a lot of it was work. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have tried this. Sometimes it was travel, or so this really could
experiences.
It could go experiences, right? It could go across a lot of things.
Yeah. The one thing you're never going to say is, I wish I would have worked that awful job more.
Well, right. It's not
or
gonna be,
stayed
it's not
there
going to be
longer.
on your, what do they say on your gravestone? I wish I would have spent more time at the whatever.
Right.
And a lot of people are like, someday I will. I think someday I will. I always thought someday I would.
And then.
But then I never thought it's just,
So anybody listening today, take that away. Like, if you have a dream, if you have a thought, if you have a passion that you've been putting to the back of your mind, or putting on the back burner, or thinking I'm too old, or I'm past that stage of my life, or I couldn't possibly, or there's people, would I ever be good enough? There's people that are doing this so well. Why me? Get those ideas out of your mind.
And not only to start, but also sometimes you're in the middle of maybe your passion job or your dream, and you're just stuck. You
can't see
you
a
kind of
path
start.
forward.
You're like, okay, I'm gonna, and then all that stuff comes, also gets in the way. So you don't.
So don't stop.
So
go and take the first step.
Yes, one step at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Love that. Sorry. I needed to reflect on that
okay.
because I'm like, that's powerful to me.
It's very powerful.
Because I don't want to be that person that gets to those final days with my family and friends around me and my hospice care team there. And I don't want to have to say, I wish I would have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be able to say, I'm so glad that I got to celebrate this life with all of you. And I did everything I thought I wanted to do.
I tried it. Or
I tried it. Or I did. I failed at it. I succeeded at it. I hated it once I did it, but I did it.
It was amazing. Or I tried it. And wasn't what I thought.
Hey,
or whatever.
it made me into the person I am today. Whatever that might be, but don't say I wish I would have.
Yeah.
Oh, love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. Moving on. So in that journey, as Morgan said, I know acting classes became a passion project that now became a part-time job, which is so cool that you still hang on to that and incorporate that today because you enjoy it. I can see you light up when we talk about it.
I do. It's a lot of fun.
What was the pivotal moment in time though? We all have those moments that cause us to really pause and cause us to change our path or our course or really stop and say, whoa. What are those moments in your life that caused you to have that pause or to really just change course or to realize, wow, okay, no, this is what it is now, or this isn't what it is?
Yeah.
Everybody's story is different. So we can't wait to hear, this part of your journey.
Well, you know how they say everybody has something.
Everybody has something. And that's for all our listeners. Everybody has something. Everybody.
And so I think for me, sometimes it's hard to point to one thing, but for me, what happened was honestly, and I want to say maybe 8 years ago or so. And let me preface this by saying that I'm a therapist or, licensed who's been in therapy. So interestingly enough, I know from both sides, right? So I know how to help people. And I also know
what it's like on the other side.
On the other side. And
to me, that makes you almost more valuable, though, because you have seen it from both sides. And you have then the empathy for the person on the other side that you're trying to help because you know what it's like.
Often I can relate, empathize or believe people's stories, right? What their experiences. And so about 8 years ago, I was having a lot of physical health problems, in particular, like with my stomach, like just all kinds of just awful issues. And to the point where I could not eat. I mean, I could swallow, but I had no appetite. And it was scary. I was like, am I just gonna never not eat? And then what's gonna happen? I mean, I couldn't.
I know my sister would laugh right now because she is a nervous eater. So she eats when she gets nervous. I am the opposite. If I get super, super nervous about something, the thought of eating food is almost just like, I can't do it. So I totally can relate with what you're saying. My sister would laugh and go, I wish I had that problem, but that's how I am too.
And at the time it was, I was like, had pain, physical pain in my stomach. And I just was very physically ill. And so I was going through to all these doctors and getting all these tests and specialists.
Something wrong, right? It's not normal not to be able to eat. That's not normal.
Test and test. And so finally I ended up at the Cleveland Clinic and having more tests, more advanced tests. And so you meet with the doctor after to go over your test results. And he was like, well, your test results are all normal.
And you're like, no.
And he said, but you need to get your depression under control. And when I tell you, it hit me, maybe for some other people, they might be like, what do you mean? I can remember sitting in that moment feeling, because of course, by that time, my emotions, anything I was feeling, I figured was right. Right at that moment, I just went, that's what it is.
You believed him?
100%. I was like, that is exactly
you just needed to hear it from someone else.
I needed to hear it at all. I mean, I was
too close to it.
I was so close to it. And I was like, I cannot believe I didn't. Oh my God. Right. I mean, and so it felt kind of strange in a way. I mean, even, I was depressed, but of course, you tie it all, it was just way too close. And I had never been that severe before. So,
I think let's talk about that for a second. I think anxiety and depression
named,
is so common for lack of a better
is.
description.
I can tell you, yes, it is.
Well, and it's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
And within my loved one, I see it a lot.
Yeah.
And not only do I see it a lot, I know from having recent teenagers, high school years, it is so rampant in that age group and adolescents up to, young adults. And there's so many causes. And I think yet as society, we accept heart disease. I mean, we want to find a cure, but we don't shame anybody for having heart disease. Right? Well, maybe we do, I guess, if they're really, really, really not taking care of themselves. But you get what I'm saying. We want to find ways to help them. If you have diabetes, what can we do to help you? If you have whatever. But mental illness is one of those. I think we still have a hard time in society openly discussing and feeling comfortable with, what can I do to help you?
Right. And to that, also shaming ourselves.
Being ashamed to talk about it because you don't know how it's going to be received, because it's not socially acceptable in some circles, I would say.
And that's interesting because right now, I'm still have a few therapy clients, and I'm working only with college students. And sort of a funny thing about that is everybody's in therapy. All their friends are in therapy. So that's a good news. All the good news is everybody's in therapy.
But why?
But there's still, but I think because it's not as stigmatized anymore. Not every single person. But
right.
People
There's
are more in touch and want to feel better. And so it's varying degrees, right? Some is stress, some is more, depression, anxiety. Yeah. But the other piece is there's still this level of I shouldn't have to need help.
Because it's mental versus physical.
Correct.
Yeah. And so how do we fix that? That's a topic for another day.
Totally another topic. I'll be back. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
This isn't a show about mental illness. And I understand that. But
yes.
Part of our journeys sometimes is either having to deal with those things ourselves and being in the patient chair, or then on your end, then becoming the person that helps those individuals.
And this is, so what happened at that point is that I had to make some choices to receive some intensive treatments.
You had to make choice on what's best for me at this moment.
And I wanted to. I was like, well, this isn't, I don't want to feel, this isn't, I can't stay like this, right? And so,
but you were willing. That was the first step. That was the first step.
So having that personal lived experience had really transformed me. And put me on the trajectory of who I am and where I've ended up today.
So is that why you then went on this path to become more of a coach consultant in that area? Okay. I love that tie-in.
Because part of the treatment and process, not only that I have some of the techniques and skills that they translate to coaching. Coaching is not therapy, but there are things that translate because there are common things that people do that get in their way that are not necessarily a clinical level of anxiety, but that, our thoughts affect our feelings and our behaviors. And that's just a piece. But again, like just kind of having gone through, and that was just a part of all that. And so kind of having that transformation and realizing, getting in so much more touch with things that are in my control.
So did you decide to go the coaching route then after your...
Not right away.
Not right away. Okay.
That has been just over more years of working, in particular with women. Although I'll tell you, it's men too, right? People struggle. I think
Sure.
But working with women, particularly in because part of my work in therapy has been people in life transitions. So and just seeing more and more these blocks and what's getting in people's way to really. It can be the life you want, but in particular around their work and their career, and they're fulfilled, and they want to be an entrepreneur, or maybe it's just a different job, where they are, maybe a different position. Or
do you know what I would love to work with you on? This is something that just kind of came to me. Yes. So one of the things, and I have a shirt that says "Know Your Why." I don't have it on today.
Oh, I was like, that's not what it says.
This one is "Be Real, Not Perfect."
Yeah. Okay.
Hence the whole accept who you are and be that.
Love it.
But another one that I have says "Know Your Why." And I love that your why
Mm-hmm.
came from all these life experiences. And, you know, there was a whole series of them and moments of aha and moments of clarity and moments just of understanding how you were meant to be there and how that then affected your next decision because it touched you to your soul, you know. And know your why is almost like this perfect trifecta of purpose, passion, and then can I make it into a career or hobby? Like how then can I implement it into my life? So purpose, passion, and life, we're going to call it. I just kind of made the life part up. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
I would love to grant more women the opportunity, sorry, I have a little cough, to acknowledge and understand how to navigate that.
Yeah.
Because for years, I had this feeling like, I feel like I'm meant to do something different.
Correct.
Loved what I was doing. I'll be honest. I love marketing. I own a marketing agency. That's not a secret. I love marketing.
Yeah.
But I always had this external, like almost voice saying, no, but you're meant to do something different. You can keep doing what you're doing. You're not hurting anything, but you are meant to do something different. And then you start to second guess yourself. Am I really? Or am I just wanting to? So I'm like, why am I feeling, what makes me special enough to do something different?
Right.
But when that message and that voice persists, eventually you have to stop and go, am I meant to do something different? And how do I find my why? And I think if we could come up with almost like a step-by-step program and I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't found one that gave me the clarity I was looking for. And how do we take that purpose and passion and build it into our life in a meaningful way where we do feel like now we have fulfilled our life's purpose? I think if we could get to that moment, it would give us all so much peace.
Yeah.
In that stage of our life that we're making that transition.
Well, and your example, and what I'm going to say next is sort of loosely based on sort of those three kind of points, but and you know, I mean this with a lot of compassion.
No, I do.
When I say this, I say in a very, what are you waiting for?
Right.
You know, and it's not just you. It's not just you.
No. I know what you're saying.
And also, I have gone through these things. It's not, and listen, we're all a work in progress.
But I think what we're waiting for, like, let's be real, is the clarity. Because I don't know how, sometimes I think I can figure those things out on my own. And then sometimes I go, but is that right? Like, almost like if
but that's not being clear. Is it right or wrong?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So there's a few pieces. One is getting clear. Like, what exactly maybe is it? Like, a kind of this. Okay, so getting clear. And then also, one of the things that I feel so strongly about, I mean, it's a thing. It's not just me making it up, but is that
It's something you've adopted.
New alert. No. Is that it's really what is going on up here in our minds. And so now that isn't new. We've all heard this before. That isn't like, oh, revolutionary thing. But what you were just saying is like, well, I think this. So like, maybe I think, well, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. And then it's sort of like, those thoughts of like, but what if I fail? What if I can't do that?
What if somebody's better than me?
What if somebody's better than me? What if all the what if negatives? So then it's like really getting to, but you know, our brains don't default to what if it all works out?
Yeah.
What if it really goes well? What if, you know, the best happens? So sort of starting and also that all or nothing thinking like, well, if I don't do it perfectly, you know, then forget it.
Yeah.
You know, instead of being like, I mean, there's so much to this. There's a lot to it, but also just the way, you know, we self-sabotage and we and speak to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, there's a way to learn how to be our own inner ally and to, you know, we spend so much time with our external relationships, our friends, networking groups,
Sure.
You know, maybe industry, you know, round table. We do so much but the most important piece is what are we doing with ourselves?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's
you know,
hard.
If we talk to people the way that we talk to ourselves,
we wouldn't have any friends.
Well,
or we'd have very few.
Well, right.
Like we're hard on ourselves, I feel like, for the most part.
Yeah. And it takes, there's practice to it. And there are methods to get to that piece, and ways to then and sort of there's a clarity piece on that. And then how to actually, and then it even helps with setting your goals and how to, so it's a whole, And it kind of goes in with what you were saying. So
Yeah.
there's just,
Yeah.
the show's only half hour, so I can't go into everything. But there is, you know, a lot to the whole thing.
Well,
And
we are
I
going to
just
revisit
believe-
that together
Gotta
because
love
I
it.
would love to come up with a
Love it.
program or a webinar series or even
Love it.
a group that people can join
I would
to identify
be
that,
thrilled.
you know, to
Be
really
happy.
work through that
Be happy to.
and get to a point where at least you know what it is that you're
Yeah.
passionate about and figure out how to
Yeah.
define it and say, okay, now what's my path forward to get there?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
think
that.
I was gonna.
I think that's a first step,
It's like,
right?
let's finally do this.
I love
Let's finally
that.
do it.
I love
Like,
that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty. So, I know that you are again in the middle of kind of
And a
switching
lifelong
gears
learner by
and-
everything you've
Yes,
accomplished,
yes.
goodness sakes.
But what is your favorite thing to do to stay educated? And this is personally or with your
Or professionally,
certifications
yeah.
or
So I will maintain my clinical license, you know.
So like education units and things like that.
Education units, because that will always be. And then, you know, I read and listen to podcasts and
So what kind of books, like
so
if you, to our
here is
listeners,
one of
call out
the-
something that's
here
really
is
made a difference to
something
you.
that I'm considering maybe at one point you can actually become a I don't know if it's a practitioner or become certified in it, but so for the past 25 years, there's it's not just her, but there's a psychologist. Her name is Kristen Neff, Dr. Kristen Neff.
I've heard of her.
And she's like kind of
somewhere.
the rock star of,
Okay.
well, I say that, the rock star of self-compassion.
Okay.
So she has a book and I highly recommend it. It's
Oh.
called Self-Compassion. That's the name of the book. And so she has spearheaded this research on self-compassion. And again, it's been over 25 years. She's not the only person that's done it. Actually, the
Okay.
website is selfcompassion.org. I think between self and compassion, there's a hyphen. So
Okay.
play around with that it's a tremendous resource. It's tremendous. So I recommend those two things. And then I think she wrote another book too called Fierce Self-Compassion. But she actually started when she was getting her PhD, she wanted to study self-esteem. And then she went to a meditation class and you can see her speak.
It's that
on
whole
a
inner
ton of
voice thing, yeah.
YouTube videos. And she found out that self-compassion is more stable because it's not dependent on circumstances. So there's a whole way to talk to ourselves. And you know, a lot of us are like, oh yeah, I know. And you talk to myself more. Okay, well, but then we don't
actually
talk
do
with
it.
my hands a lot. we don't do it. So
Right.
it's a very conscious process, and it's about, you know, acknowledging that maybe hard things are going on, but you know, just, I mean, really talking to yourself like a best friend. And I don't want to simplify it, but think about the way that I would be like, you know, this is really hard, or like, you know, but to ourselves, we're like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you
Pull up your big old panties and move on.
I mean, you know, and
Yeah.
so, which every now and then that's a little motivating, but then
Right.
it's
There has to
and
be
then
a
it's
balance.
not helpful.
There has to be a
anymore.
balance. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I feel really passionate about that because I think if we change the way we talk to ourselves, then that would be pretty amazing. I mean, do you want to be your worst enemy or your best friend?
Well, and
What,
you
know?
are who you spend the most time with. I mean, like, let's be real.
And
You
how much,
can't
you know,
escape
how
your
much-
own thoughts or your own mind. Like, it's there 24/7.
And if they have that much power,
Yeah.
you know, why not?
That's
shift?
amazing.
Yeah.
So at
Yes.
the end of every podcast,
Yes.
when we publish the podcast, we will do like your recommended readings or
Yes.
and we will definitely put that on there.
Yes,
If you have
that is
anything
one
else you
for
want to
sure.
add, we will add them to that.
Real quick, if anyone listens to Mel Robbins or follows Mel Robbins, yes,
Okay.
I love, a lot of people know who she is, but she has the
Yes.
high five habit. I love that, the high five habit, which
Yes.
is basically every morning you wake up and you
Yeah.
give, this sort of sounds silly or simple, but you
Yeah.
give yourself a high five in the
Love
mirror.
that.
And so I just love that. There is a book too that I just, I don't think it's brand new or anything, but I also think it's just a great quote, which is, don't believe everything you think.
Oh,
So,
that's hard.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because we're thinking
It
it,
is,
right? So it's
right.
like, it's hard to say, oh, you're wrong, you
Right.
know? Yeah.
Mhm.
Just as everything, not anything, just everything.
Well,
Everything.
believe it or not, we are at our closing mark.
yes.
It's so hard to stop when we're having fun. But you have been a delight. First
Oh
of
my
all,
gosh. Well,
let's
thank
start
you
there.
so much for having me here to talk and just
there are people that come into your life, for different reasons or a season or a lesson. And I have a feeling you have come into our lives for a season, and we're going to do a lot of great things together. So there will be more to come from us. Yes. But we want you to leave our listeners today, because you've been such a gem and a joy to have on. Leave them with that one word of advice or that one quote or that one last phrase that you want them to remember you by.
So one of my favorite quotes, and I meant to really memorize it before we came here, and I hope I don't, and I can't pronounce the poet's name, so even better, but it's something to the effect, and the time came when the pain to remain in the bud was, oh my gosh, guys, I'm going to mess this up. Something about, it's more painful to remain in a bud than it is to blossom. You guys know where I'm going with this.
That.
And if you look it up, it's really even a little more beautiful.
Well, we're going to look it up and have you share it, and we'll share it under your bio on the podcast. So anybody that wants to know what the quote is, go there. But I get what you're saying.
Change how you think, and you can change your world. So change your thoughts, change your world. So
I love that. And thank you again for being
welcome.
on
Thank
today.
You
have been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. And just remember, women can do anything, and in heels.